Magic the Gathering, the game known for its rich worlds, interesting planeswalkers, and powerful creatures. When you think of what stories you can tell with Magic's IP, I'm pretty sure we all think of the exact same thing. And that's a romance manga. Yeah, you heard me right. Magic actually has its own official romance manga. Released in 2018, the manga Destroy All Humankind, They Can't Be Regenerated is set in the long-distance era of 1998 and explores the budding romance between two Magic the Gathering players. Hajime Kano is the protagonist of our story. He's a lover of video games, manga, and of course, Magic the Gathering. He's incredibly smart, often being the second highest scorer on the school's exams. However, he's kind of a loser. He's incredibly loud, makes constant random references to obscure manga and video games, and most people just think he's some kind of like weird otaku guy. One of those people being Emi Saiwatari. Emi is the top scoring student on the class exams, and is incredibly talented, popular, and is not a fan of Kano and his buddies, loudly playing Magic during break time. These two don't get along, and Kano actually views her as his arch rival, swearing that he'll defeat her one day, likely with the power of God and anime on his side. One day after school, while talking with his friend, Kano learns about a specialty card store that's about an hour away by bike. Kano of course decides that he needs to go to this store because he can get specific Magic cards to power up his deck, and he can keep being the best at Magic in his friend group. So he makes his way over. At said store, what's this? Oh my god, it's Emi! And she's playing Magic? And she's really good at it? Kano, being the totally sane and secure person that he is, decides that he's gonna hide his identity and call himself Cloud, then challenge Emi to a duel. And in this duel, he will defeat her. And finally, he'll be able to best her in something. He'll finally show that he's actually really good at attack. And he gets completely destroyed. And just absolutely decimated. Just destroyed. And then after the game, he accidentally reveals himself when he drops his cards, and then Emi finds out and she runs out of the store. Could have gone worse. The next day, Kano goes to return Emi's cards, and she's pissed. She makes him promise to keep her playing Magic a secret because it would be terrible if that got out. He decides to keep her secret, and the two start playing Magic together at the LGS. And they go from being bitter rivals to actually being friends. And then to actually being girlfriend and boyfriend. While the setup may seem pretty simple, it's actually done incredibly well. A ton of time has gone into making sure that the story feels authentic, and it takes full advantage of Magic's IP. From a visual standpoint, each duel does an amazing job at visually showing the power and feel of specific cards. For example, look at how intimidating and powerful a card like Necropotence feels, or the destructive force that a card like Earthquake can bring. The manga also does a very good job at explaining popular decks and strategies that were actually used in the late 90s. And for somebody like me, who wasn't actually even alive during this time, it's been a great way to learn about these unique and old strategies. And they cover a decent amount. They go over decks like Enchantress, Living Death, Oath of Druids, Turbo Genius, Time Warp, Loop Sly, this weird deck that revolves around Temporal Aperture, and my god, this frame goes insanely hard for a combo deck based around Bottle Gnomes and Corpse Dance! What's also really cool is that the series goes out of its way to cover every single release that came out during the time, and how those releases affected the average player. They cover how the release of certain cards affected the overall metagame, how new cards can lead to the creation of new decks and the destruction of others. They even go over the mass bannings that happened due to Urza's block, the massive rules overhaul that came with 6th edition, and even covering a lot of the smaller and obscure products like Unglued and Portal 3 Kingdoms. And while the details and Easter eggs are really cool to see, what really keeps you hooked in the story is the characters. You see Kano's journey from being a casual Magic player with his friends to trying to take on major tournaments, learning the many different intricacies and strategies that Magic has to offer and how to prepare against them. You see his triumphant victories and smart plays, but also his crushing defeats and frustrating losses. It's entertaining to read, but there's also definitely some silliness behind it, because it seems like everybody wants to solve their problems with a Magic duel for whatever reason. Like, you and I like the same girl? Well, we should have a Magic duel to see who's allowed to ask her out, rather than talking about it like a human being. It can feel very Pokemon-y in that sense, but the interweaving of Magic into the character's personal drama doesn't actually distract that much, which is important, because while all the references to Magic are cool, That regular teenage bullshit is what keeps you invested in the story. The characters have to deal with very relatable issues, like dealing with controlling parents that have high expectations, worrying about your social reputation, and of course the main idea that's explored throughout this manga, relationships. The relationship between Emi and Kanou is written to feel very earnest and genuine. It's adorable to see the process of the two starting to develop feelings for one another. We get to see them internalize and realize that, oh shit, I actually like this person, and how they have to figure out how to handle these new emotions. And just like how the manga handles their progression in Magic the Gathering, it also handles their progression in their relationships with the proper weight it deserves. And oh my god, this manga has so many insanely wholesome moments. Like Kanou awkwardly asking Emi for her phone number, Emi making Kanou special Valentine's Day chocolates in the shape of the black mana symbol, or Emi and Kanou opening up two halves of Big Friendly Monster. It's just, it's so freaking wholesome. The manga also explores the messier side of relationships, with some good old-fashioned teenage drama. The characters have to deal with jealousy, love triangles, and how to handle unrequited feelings. While the messiness can be fun on its own, it's really engaging to see these characters learn and develop how to best handle these types of emotions and scenarios that they've never had to deal with before. And the manga does a great job at introducing new wrenches into the story, causing the characters to continue to grow rather than just being static. If you're into romance stories, this may all sound pretty basic, but as somebody who isn't really familiar with the genre, I found it really endearing. If you're into magic, I'd recommend giving it a shot. It's definitely something different. But I also think this would be perfect if you have somebody in your life, be it a friend or partner, who isn't interested in magic, but would be interested in this style of story. It's a great jumping off point for a newcomer, because it does a great job at explaining magic's terminology, mechanics, playstyles, formats, and many other weird complexities about the game that may seem really intimidating to a newcomer. Just be aware that you have to find an online fan translation, since there hasn't actually been an official English release yet. Currently, the manga has 13 volumes, and from the looks of it, it seems to still be going strong, considering they're still introducing new characters and new twists in the most recent volume. Previously, Magic has announced that we're going to get an official Netflix series, but considering it seems to be in production hell at the moment, it's looking less and less likely that will become a reality. I think that if Magic ever does end up revisiting that idea of making an official TV show, I think adapting this into a full-blown anime would be a great idea, especially considering how infamous Magic's actual lore is, but also this series is special. It takes the idea of a Magic story and doesn't get lost in the high fantasy details of it all. It shows what Magic has always been, what it's always meant to be, how it brings people together, and how bonds are formed from it. Out of any Magic the Gathering story, this one is the one that truly embraces the gathering. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. I had a lot of fun making this, and I think I'm going to make more videos like this in the future.